The casket was closed, or so they told me, because my daughter-in-law insisted the accident was too severe for an open viewing. I stood in uniform beneath my black overcoat, the weight of medals on my chest nothing compared to the heaviness in my heart, watching mourners file past what was supposedly my son's body. Then my phone buzzed. The message nearly knocked me off my feet. Mom, I'm alive. That's not me in the coffin. For a moment the soldier in me, the one who had survived combat zones and countless missions, stumbled under the blow. If you're hearing this, let me back up and explain how this nightmare began. My name is Captain Elena Ramirez, 42 years old, United States Army. I'd raised my son Gabriel as a single mother after his father walked out when Gabriel was just 6. Through deployments, moves and long nights he was always my anchor. Or at least I thought so. Gabriel had married a woman named Lena 3 years ago. I tried to welcome her, but there was always something off. Controlling, manipulative, she had a way of cutting him off from the people who truly loved him. Still, I bit my tongue. A soldier knows when to hold fire, and I wanted my son to be happy. 2 weeks before the funeral, Gabriel had called me with excitement in his voice I hadn't heard since he was a boy. Mom, Lena and I are getting into real estate development. There's an incredible opportunity in Florida. We might have to relocate for a while. I remember my response clearly, that ever-present instinct sharpening. Be careful, son. Schemes that sound life-changing usually come with a price. He chuckled, but it felt forced. It's not a scheme, Mom. Lena's got it figured out. Big money. Life-changing money. A week later I got the call every parent fears. Lena, sobbing hysterically, told me Gabriel had been killed in a car accident. His vehicle had caught fire, she claimed, burning the body so badly it was barely identifiable. She insisted on handling the funeral herself. Please, Elena, let me protect you from seeing him like that, she'd cried into the phone. Her performance felt rehearsed, but grief muddies your instincts. I'd buried brothers in arms before. I knew how shock could twist people. Against every fiber of my being I agreed to the closed casket. But now, standing at my son's funeral with his impossible message glowing on my phone screen, my instincts roared back to life. The woman clinging to my arm wasn't a grieving widow. She was playing a role. And my son was still alive. I slipped out of the viewing room, hands steadying as I typed back. Where are you? What's happening? The reply came instantly. Can't explain now. They're watching. Meet me at the old Harrison farm tomorrow, 1,500 hours. Come alone. Don't trust Lena. I forced myself to walk back inside, accepting condolences from neighbors who believed they were mourning a filled coffin. Lena squeezed my hand, her makeup flawless despite her endless tears. Thank you for being so strong, Elena, she whispered. Gabriel would be proud of you. I stared at her, every instinct in my body now fully awake. I wanted to grab Lena by the shoulders and demand the truth, but years in uniform had drilled patience into me. You don't walk into an ambush head-on. You assess, you adapt, and you wait for the right moment. If Gabriel was in hiding, he had his reasons. And if these people were bold enough to fake his death, a public confrontation could put us both in the crosshairs. So instead I forced a sad smile and patted her hand. We'll get through this together, dear. The Harrison farm, where Gabriel had once taken teenage dates, thinking I didn't know, was the place he'd chosen. 20 acres of abandoned land 15 miles out of town. Forgotten. Remote. The kind of place soldiers know is perfect for a secret rendezvous. That night I barely slept. Every creak in the walls, every shifting shadow outside my window felt like a threat. My instincts whispered questions I didn't want to face. What had Gabriel stumbled into? Was he truly in danger? Or was this some twisted game he and Lena were playing together? The rational part of me said the text could be a cruel fake. But the message came from his phone. And who else would know about the Harrison farm? The next afternoon I drove my beat-up Honda down the dirt road leading to the abandoned farmhouse, heart pounding harder than it ever had under fire. If Gabriel was alive, why vanish? Why stage this funeral? And if he was in real trouble, why hadn't he come to me sooner? As the house came into view, a figure emerged from behind the barn. Even from a distance I recognized the set of his shoulders. That walk. My son. Gabriel sprinted toward the car, and the second I stepped out, he crushed me in a hug so fierce it confirmed everything my heart had already prayed for. My boy was breathing. Warm. Alive. Mom, I'm so sorry, he whispered into my hair. I never wanted you to go through that funeral. But I had to make sure you were safe first. Safe from what? I pulled back, searching his face. His eyes were older than they'd been just weeks ago, carrying shadows I recognized from soldiers who'd seen too much. From the people Lena's working with. Mom, I think they want me dead, for real. We sat in his truck behind the barn while he told me how his perfect marriage had turned into a nightmare. Lena hadn't married him for love. She'd married him for access. Do you remember when Grandpa Manuel died and left you that property in Colorado? Gabriel asked. I nodded. 40 acres of rugged mountain land my father had left me, land I'd considered worthless. I hadn't set foot there in decades. I just paid the taxes every year out of habit. Lena had it surveyed without telling us, Gabriel said, jaw tightening. Turns out there's a natural gas reserve underneath. Worth millions. Maybe tens of millions. My stomach dropped. But the land's in my name, I said. Was in your name, he corrected grimly. Remember those papers you signed last month? The ones Lena said were life insurance beneficiary updates. My blood went cold. I remembered Lena handing me a neat stack of documents, assuring me it was all routine. Family security. I hadn't read closely. I'd signed trusting her. She forged parts of it, Gabriel continued. Made it look like you were transferring the property to me for estate planning. Then she had me sign paperwork that would make her the sole heir if anything happened to me. The pieces clicked into place like a sniper's scope locking onto its target. So if you're dead, she owns land worth millions. Exactly. And it gets worse. The people she's working with, they're not just lawyers or shady investors. They're criminals, Mom. They've pulled this on other families. They find older people with valuable assets they don't realize they have, and then they take everything. That old, familiar fire rose in my chest. The same protective fury I'd felt every time someone threatened my boy when he was a child. Only this time the threat was bigger. How did you find out? I asked, my voice steady with a soldier's calm even as my pulse thundered. I overheard a phone call, Gabriel said. Lena was talking to someone about how they'd handle my accident. She was planning the funeral before I was even supposed to be dead. He shuddered. I realized I had hours, maybe less, before they made their move. So you disappeared? I had to. But I also had to make them think their plan worked, at least for a while. If they knew I was alive, they might come after you to flush me out. I studied his face, the tension in his jaw, the way his eyes scanned the tree line like a soldier on patrol. Whose body is in that casket, Gabriel? Nobody's. It's weighted with sandbags. I figured if I could buy enough time I could find evidence to stop them. He looked at me with a pleading steadiness. Mom, I need your help. These people are serious. I can't fight them alone. For decades I'd protected this boy from skinned knees and broken hearts. Now he needed me for something far more dangerous. The officer in me wanted to take him straight to the police. The mother in me recognized the fear in his eyes was real, and that we needed proof before anyone would believe us. What do you need me to do? Relief flickered across his face. First we get you somewhere safe. Then we figure out how to expose what Lena's doing before she realizes I'm not actually dead. As if summoned, my phone buzzed. A text from Lena. Elena, can you come over tonight? There are some of Gabriel's business papers I need to go over with you. The trap was already closing, but at least now we could see its teeth. I agreed to meet her that evening, playing the grieving mother-in-law while my very much alive son stayed hidden at the Harrison farm. The plan was simple. Get evidence while she still believed I was an easy mark. Gabriel and Lena lived in a modest two-story I'd helped them buy with a down payment gift 2 years ago. Another investment in my son's happiness that now felt like part of a longer con. Thank you for coming, Lena said, opening the door with red-rimmed eyes and a trembling voice. Scaworthy, I thought. She led me to the kitchen table where a neat fan of documents waited. I know this is difficult, but we need to start thinking about Gabriel's estate. There are assets to transfer and I wanted to make sure you understood everything. I slid on my reading glasses, scanning the pages. Some I recognized from the stack I'd signed last month. Others were new, including a power of attorney giving Lena control over my Colorado property. I don't understand, I said, channeling my most disarming out-of-her-depths parent. Why would Gabriel's estate have anything to do with my land? Her mask slipped, just a flash of irritation before the Widow Act returned. Gabriel was helping with your estate planning, remember? He wanted to make things simple for you, especially with your schedule and after your fall last winter. I had slipped on ice and bruised my hip. Hardly evidence I couldn't manage my own affairs. I could see the narrative they'd been building for months. Overwhelmed, distracted, needs a caretaker. That's very thoughtful, I said, forcing a grateful smile. But I can still handle my own business. Of course you can, she replied quickly. This just streamlines everything. I nodded, then paused over a line item. Why does this paper say the property is worth $12 million? My father's land isn't worth anything. Her pupils widened just a hair. That's a placeholder for insurance purposes. Legal forms require estimated values. I tipped my water glass, just enough to send a cold sheet across the table. Oh no, I'm so clumsy. While Lena rushed for towels, I lifted my phone and snapped photos of the damp pages. Front, back, every signature line. By the time she returned, I was dabbing uselessly at the mess. I'm so sorry, dear. Should we do this another day? No, it's fine, she said, jaw tight under the softness. I have copies. Why don't we just focus on the property transfer tonight? We can handle the rest later. She produced a fresh power of attorney and slid it toward me, eyes fixed like a cat watching a mouse. Will this help with taxes? I asked lightly. Absolutely. It'll save you thousands. All you need to do is sign right here. She pushed the pen to my hand. I picked it up, then set it down. I think my lawyer should look at this first. Gabriel always told me never to sign legal documents without professional advice. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Lena's smile went tight, almost grotesque. Elena, I'm family. You can trust me, and the longer we wait, the more complicated the tax situation becomes. Something in her tone tripped every survival instinct I'd honed in uniform. This wasn't just about money. This was a woman who would do whatever it took to get what she wanted, and eliminate obstacles along the way. I'm sure you understand, dear. It's just good practice, I said, standing and gathering my purse. I'll call my attorney tomorrow. Her composure cracked. Sit down, Lena. We're not finished. The grieving widow vanished. Something far more dangerous stared back at me. My son hadn't been paranoid at all. The 20-minute drive home felt like an hour-long convoy through hostile territory. Every tailgater, every shadow at an intersection, tightened my grip on the wheel. By the time I turned into my driveway, I was sure Lena knew I knew. I was right. 3 men waited in my living room. They hadn't bothered to hide. My lamps were on, their coats draped over my furniture like they owned the place. Captain Ramirez, said the one in his 50s, parked in my old leather recliner, a face you'd forget if you weren't terrified of it. We need to talk. I let the command voice drop into place, the same one that could freeze a platoon mid-step. You weren't invited. Believe. Now. He smiled. Worse than a threat. I'm afraid we can't do that yet. There's been some confusion about your son's business affairs. We need to clear it up. My son is dead, I said flatly. Whatever business he had died with him. That's the thing, Captain. We have reason to believe Gabriel might not be as dead as everyone thinks. My heart stuttered, but my face stayed stone. That's a cruel thing to say. I buried my boy today. Did you? The younger one, eyes like ice, held up a phone with a grainy photo. Gabriel near the Harrison farm, time-stamped 3 hours earlier. No games, Captain. Your son owes us money. A lot of money. Since he's decided to play dead, we'll collect from his next of kin. The third man finally spoke, voice flat. One way or another, we're getting what we're owed. Either Gabriel surfaces and pays, or you transfer that Colorado property to cover it. They knew about the land. Lena had clearly told them everything, probably before the staged funeral. Their plan A had failed, and now they were executing plan B. How much? I asked, buying time while calculating how to warn my son. 2.5 million, plus interest. Your boy made very poor investment choices with our money. The number hit like a body blow. Even if the land was worth what they believed, there was no way to liquidate fast enough to keep Gabriel breathing. I don't have that kind of money, I said. But you have land worth many times that. The man in my chair leaned forward. Sign it over, the debt disappears. Your son can rise from the dead. Very biblical. Or keep protecting him and we'll find him anyway. Then we collect the money and make sure he never bothers us again, along with anyone who helped him hide. The threat was clean and cold. They'd kill us both if I didn't comply. I need time to think, I said. You have until tomorrow night, the older man replied, standing and smoothing his jacket. Lena will bring the papers. Make the right choice, Captain, for both your sakes. They left as casually as they'd arrived. I stood in my violated living room, trembling with rage and purpose. People had underestimated me my whole life because I was a woman, because I was polite. These men had made the same mistake. They had no idea what a mother or a soldier would do to protect her child. I took back roads to the Harrison farm, running anti-surveillance moves, S-turns, four-corner checks, a quick light kill test to see who stayed glued to my bumper. No one did. Gabriel was pacing inside the old farmhouse, a caged animal with my eyes. They found you, I said. They have photos. Taken today. He went white. How? I've been careful. Doesn't matter. They gave me an ultimatum: sign over the Colorado land by tomorrow night, or they kill us both. I sank onto a dusty crate, feeling the weight of the moment, not years. How did you end up owing $2.5 million, Gabriel? He dragged both hands through his hair, suddenly younger, like the teenager I'd once caught sneaking out a window. It started small. Lena said she'd found investment opportunities, private loans with huge returns. We needed seed money. First 10,000, then 25. The returns were insane at first, enough to pay the loans back and still profit. His voice curdled with shame. I should have known it was too good to be true. What happened? Ponzi scheme. When it collapsed, everyone who'd borrowed to invest got left holding the debt. And our loans weren't from banks, Mom. They were from the kind of people who break legs when you can't pay. I thought of the 3 men who'd made themselves at home in my living room, the casual way violence sat on their shoulders like a jacket. Did Lena know that when she pitched it? He stared at the floor. That's what I'm trying to figure out. Either she's the dumbest person on earth, or she set me up from the start. He looked up, desperate. What are we going to do? For the first time since this nightmare began, something steady lit up inside me. The same resolve that's carried me through deployments, long nights, and harder days. We're going to give them exactly what they want, I said. The Colorado property. Gabriel's shoulders sagged with a mix of relief and dread. Mom, I can't let you sacrifice everything for my mistakes. Who said anything about sacrifice? I smiled, feeling more like myself than I had in days. You're assuming the land is the only card on the table. You're forgetting something important. What's that? I'm an army officer. I've dealt with bullies, liars, and manipulators who thought they were smarter than everyone else. I don't outmuscle people like that, I outplan them. He looked confused, then hopeful. What's your plan? First we get you somewhere truly safe. Then I'm going to give Lena and her friends a lesson they won't forget. I checked the time. I've got papers to sign tomorrow night. I want to make sure those papers say exactly what I want them to say. Mom, these aren't soldiers trying to cheat a PT test. They're dangerous. I pictured the man lounging in my chair, issuing threats in my own living room. The fury I'd been holding back hardened into something cold and precise. So am I, sweetheart? They just don't know it yet. The next morning I cleared my schedule and drove into the city to see the one person who could help me turn this mess into justice. Marcus Chen. He'd come up under my command years ago. Young, brilliant, a little reckless. I'd written the statement that kept an Article 15 from derailing his career. After he ETS, he went to law school. Now he ran one of the most respected white-collar defense and investigations firms in the state. He still owed me a favor. Elena Ramirez, he said, standing from behind a mahogany desk with a real smile. You look exactly like the captain who smoked us on 12-mile rucks. I prefer trained to standard, I said, accepting his hug. Marcus, I need help with something unconventional. I laid out everything: Lena's forgery, the staged funeral, the threats, the land. I watched his face move from amused to concerned to razor-focused. Let me get this straight, he said, leaning back. Your daughter-in-law forged documents to steal your mineral rights. Your son staged his death to dodge loan sharks. Now those same sharks are threatening to kill you both unless you sign over property worth millions. That's the gist. You realize you're describing felonies: fraud, extortion, conspiracy, possibly kidnapping if you're being coerced. He tapped a legal pad. The smart move is call the FBI right now. And have my son arrested while the real predators disappear? No. I shook my head. There has to be another way. Marcus gave me the same look he used to give when I'd ask a private to explain his field plan on the spot. What exactly are you proposing? I want to give them the land on my terms. Can you draft documents that look airtight but are laced with legal landmines they won't see until they've already stepped on them? You want to set a trap. I want to give them enough rope to hang themselves while protecting Gabriel and recovering what they stole from other families. Marcus, they've done this before. How many seniors have lost everything because they trusted the wrong person? He was quiet for a long beat. Then the corner of his mouth lifted. The same expression I'd seen the day he finally understood the power of a feint in a battle plan. What did you have in mind? 3 hours later, I walked out with a briefcase full of documents that looked exactly like what Lena and her partners expected. On the surface. Underneath, they were tripwired. On paper, the transfer moved my Colorado property into a newly created trust with Lena named as trustee. Hidden in the trust instrument were automatic provisions triggering mandatory disclosures of all prior fraudulent activity to federal authorities. Acceptance of the trusteeship constituted sworn certification under penalty of perjury. The moment they signed, they'd be confessing to crimes and handing jurisdiction to agencies that do not miss. It's diabolical, Marcus said, almost admiring. If they don't sign, they don't get the property. If they do, they've legally confessed and tripped federal oversight. I learned from the best, I said. Sun Tzu always liked a good bait. Back home, I practiced looking like a frightened, compliant woman instead of someone who'd just spent the day out maneuvering career criminals. At exactly 1900 hours, my phone rang. Elena. Lena's voice was clipped. All business. The Widow Act was over. I have the papers ready. I'll be over in an hour. Actually, dear, could we meet somewhere else? Having people in the house so soon after Gabriel's funeral feels overwhelming. Pause. Where did you have in mind? The Riverside Diner, I said. It's public, well lit, and they have excellent pie. I let a tremor into my voice. I could use something familiar. She agreed, probably thinking a public place would keep me from making a scene. She had no idea I was counting on witnesses. The Riverside Diner had poured the best coffee and apple pie in town for 40 years. More importantly, it was where Sheriff Ethan Cole ate dinner every Tuesday, where Prosecutor Rachel Duarte hosted her book club, and where half the town council came to gossip under the humming neon clock. In other words, it was exactly where you go when you need credible eyes on criminals incriminating themselves. I arrived early and took my usual back corner booth. Clear line of sight to the whole room, mirrors behind the counter giving me angles on the entrance. Sheriff Cole was at his table with a plate of meatloaf and a stack of reports. Perfect. Lena walked in right on time with the man who'd been lounging in my chair the night before. She introduced him as Victor Hale, Gabriel's business partner. Victor swept the room, clocked the sheriff, and tried to hide the calculation in his eyes. I thought this was going to be private, Victor said, sliding into the booth across from me. It is private, I replied mildly. No one's paying attention to us. Lena set a manila folder on the table. These are the documents we discussed. The property transfer, some insurance paperwork, and a few other items that need your signature. I opened the folder, took in the clean, convincing forgeries that would have destroyed my life yesterday, then pushed them aside and lifted my briefcase onto the table. Actually, I had my attorney prepare something more comprehensive, I said, laying Marcus Chen's packet between us. I want to make sure everything is done properly. Victor's expression tightened. Your lawyer. He's thorough. I smiled. He made sure these protect everyone's interests. For 20 minutes I watched them read papers that looked like a windfall and were, in truth, a minefield. Legal tripwires Marcus had buried beneath technical language and boring headings. Every paragraph was bait. This feels more complicated than necessary, Lena murmured, flipping through dense text. Well, dear, when you're dealing with millions, you can't be too careful. I lifted a hand for more coffee. Marcus insisted on including provisions to protect against any previous irregularities in the property's history. Victor's head snapped up. What kind of irregularities? Oh, the usual. No outstanding liens, no fraudulent transfers, no criminal activity associated with prior ownership changes. My tone stayed light. Standard protection. What I didn't say, By signing, they were formally acknowledging awareness of prior criminal activity and accepting a mandatory duty to report it to federal authorities, under penalty of perjury. Marcus had woven the confession into the transfer itself. "I think we should have our lawyer review this first," Victor said, starting to close the folder. Of course, I agreed easily. Though Marcus mentioned the property tax implications change after midnight tonight. Something about quarterly reporting and federal oversight on high-value mineral rights transfers. Total nonsense. Official-sounding nonsense. Lena and Victor exchanged a look. "What exactly happens after midnight?" Lena asked. "The transfer becomes subject to additional federal scrutiny, which could delay processing for months. Marcus says it's better to finalize under current regulations." I shrugged, apologetic. "I don't pretend to understand all the technicalities." Victor pulled out his phone. 8:07 p.m. on a Tuesday. No reputable attorney was answering an emergency call about a land transfer at this hour. "Fine," he said at last. "But I'm reviewing every page before anyone signs." "Please," I said, folding my hands. For the next 40 minutes they combed through the documents that would sink them, and I answered their questions with calm, practiced explanations that made each trap sound like standard due diligence. When the pens finally touched paper, I felt the clean click of a plan locking into place. The same satisfaction I'd felt watching a young soldier finally grasp a complex tactic. They had no idea they'd just confessed. The moment the signatures dried, I excused myself, briefcase in hand, and walked, not to the restroom, but straight to Sheriff Cole's table. "Ethan," I said quietly, taking the seat across from him. "I need to report multiple felonies, and I have written confessions from the perpetrators." To his credit, he set down his fork without a word. I laid out the essentials in a low voice, one eye still on Lena and Victor, who were murmuring in the booth, no doubt planning how to spend their millions. "Captain," he said, jaw tightening as I finished, "they threatened to kill you and your son. They made their intent very clear." I opened the briefcase and slid the signed packet to him. "My attorney designed these so that by signing, they've acknowledged their criminal conduct and agreed to cooperate with federal authorities." He scanned the pages, 20 years of experience evident in how fast he saw it. He looked up. "This is incredibly clever," he said. "And completely legal." "Completely," I said. "Marcus made sure of it." I glanced toward our booth. Lena checked her watch. Victor pretended to be bored. I turned back to Sheriff Cole. "There's something else. My son isn't actually dead." That got his full attention. "Come again." "Gabriel faked his death to survive these people. They found him anyway." I brought up the photos I'd taken of the forged documents in Lena's kitchen. "I've got evidence of fraud, extortion, and conspiracy, and now I have their signed confessions." Ethan was quiet for a beat, then a grin tugged at the corner of his mouth. "Captain, in 20 years of this job, I've never seen a civilian run a tighter operation." He started to rise. "Let me have a word with your dinner companions." "Wait." I put a hand on his sleeve. "They have partners. If you grab Lena and Victor now, the rest will scatter." "What are you suggesting?" "Give me 5 more minutes. I'll confirm where they're delivering the documents to their bosses. Then you take everyone down at once." He studied me, probably wondering when the polite army officer turned into a strategist. 5 minutes. But if this goes sideways. It won't. I stood. I've been handling difficult people my entire career. These ones just wear better suits. I slid back into the booth. Lena and Victor looked impatient. "Sorry for the delay," I said. "Where do we go from here?" Victor relaxed a notch. "We need these to our legal team tonight for final processing. There's a warehouse on Industrial Boulevard where we're meeting them. The sooner we complete the transfer, the sooner we can all move forward," Lena added, laying the sorrow on thick. "It's been such a difficult time." I nodded sympathetically while noting the location. Industrial Boulevard was perfect for a raid. Isolated, clean angles, minimal civilian risk. "I suppose you'll need me there to verify my identity." "Actually no," Victor said quickly. "Your signature is sufficient. You can go home and get some rest." Of course they didn't want me there. I was supposed to disappear while they celebrated robbing a grieving mother. "Well then," I said, rising and gathering my things. "I guess this is goodbye." Lena had the audacity to hug me. "Thank you, Elena. Gabriel would be so proud of how strong you've been." I stepped out into the cool night. Through the window, I saw Sheriff Cole finish his dinner and stand, phone already in his hand. In 30 minutes, Lena and her crew would learn their victim had been hunting them the whole time. First, I had a call to make. I dialed Gabriel from the car. Across the lot, Ethan spoke into his phone. Coordination posture, shoulders squared, eyes scanning. State and federal were coming online. Mom. Gabriel's voice was tight. How did it go? Better than expected. They signed everything. Sheriff Cole is coordinating arrests as we speak. I started the engine, keeping my voice level despite the adrenaline spike. Sweetheart, stay exactly where you are until this is over. What about Lena? Does she suspect anything? I thought of her careful performance, the soft threats, the way she'd steered both of us for months. She thinks I'm a frightened woman who just signed away millions to save my son. She has no idea what actually happened. What if something goes wrong? What if they realize the documents are traps before the police get there? A fair concern. Marcus's landmines were elegant, not magic. Then we'll deal with that when it happens, I said firm. Listen to me, Gabriel. What they did to you, what they tried to do to our family, isn't your fault. She targeted you because you're decent and trusting. She had no idea I was counting on witnesses for what came next. I eased out of the diner lot and took the route that would swing me past Industrial Boulevard. The important thing is we're fixing it, I told Gabriel. 20 minutes later, I parked on a rise above the warehouse district. Close enough to observe, far enough to stay clean. Sheriff Cole had been thorough. Unmarked units covered every exit. A perimeter team I recognized as federal, tack gear, disciplined movement, ringed the main building. My phone buzzed. Marcus. FBI confirms your docs trigger automatic federal jurisdiction. Whatever happens tonight, they're going away for a long time. At 2,247 hours, 3 cars rolled up to the target warehouse. The first carried Lena and Victor. The second held the 2 enforcers who'd made themselves at home in my living room. The third brought 2 faces I didn't know, likely the higher-ups running the play from the shadows. They were inside for exactly 12 minutes before light towers bloomed and a voice thundered over a P. This is the FBI. The building is surrounded. Exit through the front door with your hands visible. No gunfights. No chases. Just 6 criminals, hands up, stepping into the wash of floodlights, realizing too late they'd been outmaneuvered by a woman they'd written off as harmless. My phone rang as the last suspect was loaded into a cruiser. Captain Ramirez, Ethan said. It's over. We got all of them, plus evidence tying them to at least a dozen property fraud cases across 6 states. Your son can come home. Something unclenched in my chest I hadn't realized I'd been holding. What happens now? Now you and Gabriel give statements. We process the evidence. They face federal charges. Fraud, extortion, conspiracy, criminal enterprise. His voice softened. What you did tonight probably saved dozens of families. On the drive home, relief wasn't the only thing rising in me. For years I'd helped other people find their strength. Tonight I'd found my own. Gabriel was waiting on my porch when I pulled in. Seeing him there in the porch light, alive, safe, nearly buckled my knees. Is it really over? He asked, wrapping me in a fierce hug. It's over, I said. Lena and her associates are in federal custody. The property is safe. You're safe. Instead I poured coffee. He looked older than he had a week ago, the boy who trusted too easily replaced by a man who knew what trust costs. Mom, I need to know, he said as I set his mug down. When did you realize Lena was targeting me specifically? I'd been asking myself the same thing. Honestly, not until I saw how fast she moved after your supposed death. The grief was too perfect, too practiced. The real confirmation was when she brought those papers to my house. She knew exactly what she wanted and exactly how to push to get it. He stared into the steam. How long do you think she was planning this? Probably from the moment she met you. I let the truth land, painful, necessary. Gabriel. Lena researched our family before your first date, I said quietly. She knew about your grandfather's land. She knew I'd helped you with the house. She knew I would do anything to protect you. He sat with that for a long time, the betrayal settling like weight on his shoulders. So, our whole marriage was fake. Her feelings were fake. Yours were real, I said. That matters. Does it? I feel like a fool. I reached across the table and took his hand. Sweetheart, you fell in love with the person she performed. That person acted kind, supportive, and made you happy. The fact it was an act doesn't erase what you felt. It just tells you who she really is. What am I supposed to do now? How do I trust anyone again? You start by trusting yourself, I said. You learn the red flags. You ask questions. You verify anything that sounds too good to be true. And you don't let fear barricade you from people who earn your trust. He smiled for the first time since this began. Like my mom, who turned out to be a criminal mastermind when I needed her to be. I prefer strategically gifted, I said, hearing Marcus in my head. And I learned from watching you, the courage it took to disappear when you realized how dangerous they were. You're braver than you think. What happens now? I looked around my kitchen, my home, my life, threatened hours ago and now solid beneath my feet. Now you move back home. We figure out what to do with mineral rights worth millions. And I go back to my normal routine, volunteer shifts, morning runs, quiet nights. I held his gaze. And maybe I spend a little time helping the FBI's financial crimes folks flag seniors who might be targets. I'm good at protecting people. Turns out I like it. You want to keep fighting criminals? I want to keep protecting people who can't protect themselves, I said. Mission's the same. Just a different battlefield. 3 weeks later, a letter arrived from the federal prosecutor on Lena's case. She and her associates had been charged with 23 felonies across 6 states, tied to a national web of property fraud schemes targeting older homeowners. The FBI had recovered over $40 million in stolen assets. My statement, paired with the confession by signature traps Marcus had engineered, formed the spine of a case that would send them away for a very long time. But the real victory was simpler than money or headlines. It was Gabriel, healthy, whole, learning how to trust again and choosing relationships built on truth instead of manipulation. It was me realizing I was stronger and more capable than anyone had ever given me credit for. And it was the knowledge that when people underestimate you, that underestimation can become the sharpest tool you carry. The funeral was fake. My son's return was gloriously, defiantly real. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe, and if something like this has touched your life, share your story in the comments. Your voice matters.